everyone, and welcome to another episode of Speak, Film, and Enter, a podcast where we review and rank movies. I'm Nate.
And I'm Dylan.
And today we're doing a little more catch-up on some 2022 movies that we have not reviewed yet. So another rapid review episode where just 5 to 8 minutes per movie. Kind of get our general thoughts out there. We'll give our regular star ratings at the end of each of those. So today we're talking about The Fabelmans, Triangle of Sadness, and Babylon. First two of those got Best Picture nominations. Babylon did not sneak in. A lot of people thought it might.
I was a little surprised by that.
Yeah, I thought it would get in, but I think with The Fabelmans, they probably felt like they didn't need two movies about movies.
That's true, but also I'm surprised they would show that restraint because they love movies about movies.
Well, you know, they've kind of doubled the size of the Academy in recent years. More foreign voters, younger people who tend to lean a little more towards different stuff, I think.
Yeah.
Also, Babylon, very polarizing, which we'll get to last. But we're going to start this up with The Fabelmans. And Dylan, what is it about?
The Fabelmans is the new film from Steven Spielberg. And basically, growing up in a post-World War II era Arizona, young Sammy Fabelman aspires to become a filmmaker as he reaches adolescence, but soon discovers a shattering family secret and explores how the power of films can help him see the truth. So, very autobiographical.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is about him growing up. It does have an interesting cast, I think. We got Gabriel LaBelle, who I'd never seen in anything before. He plays the lead here, Sammy Fabelman, basically playing young Steven Spielberg. Then Michelle Williams and Paul Dano as his parents, and Seth Rogen as his uncle Benny, who I don't think is not really his uncle, I don't believe.
No, I think just old.
Just sort of he hangs around the family a lot, best friends with his dad.
Yep.
And then Judd Hirsch is also in this movie and received a Best Supporting Actor nomination for basically being in one scene.
Yeah.
I mean, he's in slightly more than that, but that scene is why he got a Best Supporting Actor nomination, which I find ridiculous.
I think that's completely ridiculous. This movie is 2.5 hours long, and he's in one scene, so it's not...
if he's in this for more than 10 minutes, I would be shocked.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's but yeah, it's just, I'm okay. It just feels like in like a shorter movie, maybe some indie film or something, like an actor coming in and just delivering like one amazing monologue and scene. It's like that just has so much impact on the movie. It's like, okay, I guess, but I didn't feel that with his, like with what he brought and what his character was.
No,
he kind of gives him a pep talk, and then he's like, all right, bye. And then we don't see him again.
And clearly, Spielberg views this as a very important moment in his life when it comes to making movies and like deciding to go down that path when he was young, because, I mean, that is sort of the speech in the movie about the power of like following your dreams and the movies and all that stuff. And so it is in some kind of weird way, like kind of the heart of the movie, but the scene is fine, but his nomination, I think, is ridiculous. I did not really care for this at all. And I've thought about why for a long time. And I think, Steven Spielberg is known for oftentimes over-the-top sentimentality.
Yes.
And there are levels of strong sentimentality in pretty much all of his movies. And sometimes it works for you, and sometimes it doesn't. And the people who don't like Steven Spielberg, that's often the reason why, is it's just too schmaltzy for them to really buy into. I like a lot of Spielberg's movies. When this came out, we did an episode with our top 10 Spielberg movies. That was a lot of fun. We'll link that here. But I think the reason this didn't work for me is because it's a really schmaltzy movie that he made about himself. And it's just so much harder for me to buy in to any of the characters in this movie, knowing that Spielberg is just ramping up the importance of his own life.
Yeah.
In this movie. It's not like I'm connecting to a fictional character that I can kind of see myself in, like in E.T. or something.
Yeah.
This is just, you never forget that you're watching like Steven Spielberg's origin story and how
Mhm.
capital I important it is. And it's so long. There are cool moments when he's young, like some of the watching him like kind of film stuff with his friends.
Those are definitely
There's
my favorite parts of the movie.
easily for me, there's some really cool stuff there, but God,
Yeah.
there's so much stuff with his parents just not getting along like it's the world's greatest tragedy, which I
Yeah,
don't
like
mean to belittle kids who grow up in broken homes and are, parents get
yeah.
divorced, but the way it's treated here is just like you're watching the end of the world and only his movies can possibly save us. And
Mhm.
the whole thing was just a big kind of snoozy eye roll for me.
Yeah, I felt mostly the same way. I just felt like the slow burn kind of domestic drama part of the movie just didn't really. I don't know. It just felt repetitive and like I feel like in the first 20 minutes you're like, oh, okay, this marriage isn't going well, and then you just
Right.
get like 2 more hours of it just not going well, and then you get fun scenes where he's making movies as a kid, and you're like, hey, this is fun. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was just very. It was either I was like really kind of enjoying what was on screen, or I was actively just like bored and just like I don't know, man. Just come on, Steve. Like let's get
Yeah.
going.
And I think Michelle Williams got a nomination, and
That also surprised me a little bit.
it didn't surprise me, but her performance didn't really. It was so uncomfortable for like the entire time, which I'm sure is what they were going for, but I don't know. That one was rough for me too. And then just so many moments where other people have their lives changed by these little movies that he makes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
The
which
the
I just found so
Shaku.
unbelievable. The one like the cool kid at school with
That's what I
the
was.
oh my
Yeah,
god.
I
That
know.
one.
And
Oh,
even ends it. Even in that, like when that happens, Sammy Fabelman or whatever is like, "Oh well, I won't make a movie about it someday."
yeah,
Like
right?
it's
It
like
oh
God.
and I it really
Stop.
and this did get a best picture nomination. It really seems like that final scene where David Lynch plays John Ford, which is like kind of cool, but I was also sort of over it at that point.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, God, people seem like voters, I feel like, and kind of critics seem like they're loving the way this movie ends. And it just fit. It was just another eye roll for me. And my eyes never stopped. They were just spinning. They were doing
Yeah.
360 the entire movie.
2.5 hours of a straight eye roll. No, I
Yeah.
felt the same way. I mean, I liked that scene. It made me laugh, and I was like,
Yeah.
that was cool. But I was like, we should have gotten here like an hour ago, and
Exactly.
it would have fit more and been a great exclamation point if the whole thing had been fun.
And I
But,
guess for the people who did like the whole movie, then it does work. But it's kind
mhm.
of one of those scenes where I just wasn't feeling it by then. And so I couldn't really buy into the energy that scene was giving.
Yeah, I
So
will say, and it's funny how Michelle Williams got nominated, and once again, Paul Dano did not. I actually thought
yeah,
he kind of brought a lot more, and I just felt like something they got something against Paul Dano in the Academy. Maybe I hope one day he at least gets nominated because he's
yeah,
pretty
he
damn
should
good.
one day for
He's
sure.
pretty damn good in everything he does. But yeah,
Absolutely.
so we just hit the stars quick and we'll move on.
Yeah, I gave this a 2. I didn't really like this at all. Those few scenes of him making movies with his friends kept
Hmm.
this from being like a total disaster to me, but not a fan.
Yeah, I gave it a 2.5. I thought it was okay. Basically the same
Yeah.
things that I enjoyed, pros and cons, as
Yep.
Nate. So we'll keep it moving.
On to Triangle of Sadness, a bit of a surprise Best Picture nomination, also a Best Director nomination
For
for
Ruben Ostlund.
yes, thank you for attempting his name, so I didn't have to do it.
Attempting, I nailed it.
Oh,
Um,
excuse me for saying his name correctly.
yes, so Triangle of Sadness is about a fashion model celebrity couple join an eventful cruise for the super rich.
Yeah, and this movie is sort of split into 3 parts.
It is.
You kind of get a weird scene with, although I've heard is very accurate, with kind of you meet a male model at the beginning, and then some interesting like gender dynamics with his model girlfriend, with like kind of who has more money and who's supposed to pay, and kind of these sort of things.
Yeah.
And then part 2 is probably what most people are familiar with from trailers, which is this
Hmm.
time they spend on a yacht where they get free tickets to go on this cruise. Probably
Hmm.
not even a yacht. There's probably a different word for this type of giant boat.
Like a mega yacht or whatever. It's
Yeah, I don't
only
know.
for extremely rich. Yeah. This isn't
Yes.
a Carnival
So it's
cruise.
them and a bunch of really rich people.
Mhm.
Woody Harrelson is the captain. And then at some point, there's a shipwreck, and about a dozen of them wash up on shore somewhere. and have to survive. And oh, surprise, there's a flip in kind of who has control and who's useful because
Yeah.
rich people can't do anything by themselves.
Hmm.
So this is a movie that I think is not half as clever as it thinks it is.
Agreed.
This just strikes me as one of those things. We've kind of talked about this before, where there are a lot of movies now and TV shows about how much rich people suck. And I'm
Hmm.
fine with that. If we want to beat that to death, I think there are far worse things we could be making movies about.
Yes. Yes.
But there's nothing beyond that here given by the director really ever until I guess kind of maybe the third part of this movie. And by that point, I was so over it that
Yeah.
what could have been like if the whole movie was basically the third part of the movie, I think it could have been pretty good. But I
Yeah.
think all the stuff on the boat is kind of horrible. Although I did get a bit of a kick out of Woody Harrelson. I know that performance is sort of hit or miss for some people. That was basically the only part of this movie I liked.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
Okay.
just lots of shit and vomit, and rich people
Yeah.
are awful, aren't they? This movie acts like it's like the first thing ever to realize this,
Yeah. But
and I
all the
just
points
found
have
it.
already been made
Yeah,
by
exactly,
other
and it
things.
doesn't. There's no specific critique
Yeah.
really,
And
like there
the
is in Knives Out too, in my opinion, like in Glass Onion.
yeah.
So I did not like this at all either.
No, for me, yeah, the first two parts were, well, the first part was a dud for me. I just felt like I came out of it like thinking, okay, these are my two main characters, and I don't really like either of them.
Right.
And then we go to a yacht where where we meet a bunch of more unlikable characters, and we spend a bunch of time with them, and then they all get sick, and there's like a sewage problem on the boat, so it's just vomit and diarrhea everywhere, and oh, isn't it hilarious? And it's 10 minutes, and I just was like, I
It's
just
just so juvenile,
so yeah,
and
and
it's like 2 or 3 minutes long.
it feels like it goes on forever,
Yeah.
honestly.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's just like I don't know, like yeah, I don't know, we get it. But when they get to the island, even though the political like stuff and what he's trying to say was still heavy-handed and pretty obvious in my opinion, it was way more enjoyable to look at. You're on this like
That's
beautiful
true.
location, and the whole movie is shot very well. Like like you can tell it's well made, but I didn't like the people out on the boat. I didn't like what happened on the boat. Then we get to the island, and I was like, okay, good. There's less of them. This is at least a cooler setting. And I kind of like the power dynamics thing. Like it was interesting, and it definitely at least got me back intrigued with the movie. And then
Yeah.
I did actually like the very final end scene and kind of when it chooses to cut. Like I liked that. I felt like it didn't really fit with a lot of what the other things the movie was trying to say, or it just didn't feel like set up. But I still liked it. Like I was like, oh okay, like all right.
I
I
will
don't
agree
know.
with that. The final scene is interesting, and it leaves it
Yeah,
on a more interesting note than basically the entire rest of the movie, but,
thank you. Yes.
I
Well
still
said.
contend if it was just if, the thing crashed, like, if they washed up on the island 20 minutes in, and then we got, like, another hour to hour and a half of just if the movie was just the third part, it would be pretty
Mhm.
good.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I was beyond caring at that point, so, I also gave this a 2. Just
Mhm.
not a fan of this one really at all.
Yeah, and not to be a broken record, I also gave this a 2.5. I thought it was
Okay.
okay. When I first watched it, I gave it a 3, and then, a couple weeks have gone by, and when I think of it, I just think of the parts I didn't like, and that one
Yep.
part at the end isn't enough, so I'm just gonna, bump it to a 2.5. It's okay.
Yeah. And last and maybe least, or maybe not, who
Well,
knows?
most, if we're talking runtime. All of these movies are very long, by the way.
That too. Yeah, that's another part of it where I like Fablemans is over 2.5 hours.
Mhm.
Triangle of Sadness is about 220. Babylon is over 3 hours.
Yes, it is.
And Dylan, what is Babylon about?
Babylon. Here we go. A tale of outsized ambition and outrageous excess. It traces the rise and fall of multiple characters during an era of unbridled decadence and depravity in early Hollywood. Written and
Oh,
directed by Damien Chazelle.
Damien Chazelle did, as many of you probably know, was
Mhm.
the director of La La Land and Whiplash, as well as little lesser known First Man. So
Hmm.
no stranger to very successful movies with Oscar nominations and all that stuff.
Yep.
Um, how did this one work for you? Because this is overall, I feel similarly about this one as I did to the Fablemans and Triangle of Sadness, but
You're taking the
the
words right out of my
highs
mouth.
here are higher and the lows are lower. This
Yes.
is, I think you and I both agreed, the first half hour of this movie I hated so much.
Easily my least favorite part of any movie that has come out this year, and maybe in a couple years.
That's saying a
Like,
lot.
I mean, honestly, because it goes on for so long, and it starts the movie off in such a note that I just did not like, and
Yeah.
then it brings it back to like very interesting stuff, a lot of early Hollywood stuff. You go like on set and you get to see all the, and like that was fascinating and I loved that. And then like we finally get to kind of know our characters more, and he starts setting up what could be a great movie. But I felt like down the stretch he still just could not help himself with just the what I imagine is just his sense of humor. Like this is his, because I mean he did La La Land, which has some humor in it, and he did Whiplash, which has very little humor in it. And I feel like, is this just kind of his like, like I can be funny too, and this is what I think is funny, and it's a lot of kind of gross like bodily fluids. Like,
No, this to me felt like he was responding to some type of weird criticism of La La Land, where like La La Land is very like rosy-eyed and kind of a romanticized view of like Hollywood and the movie industry and following your dreams and how great it can all be.
yeah,
And I feel like there was a weird level of very minor but not non-existent backlash about how this movie was like wrong for like painting Hollywood in a better light than it really is and kind of misleading some
mm,
people. I
okay,
feel like this movie is just him doing like a 180 and being like, yeah, well, here's the debaucherous side of the foundations of Hollywood and all these sort of screw up kind of people who are just, you know, elephant shit and golden showers and
yeah,
swearing and fornicating and like orgy parties.
rat eating.
That also happens. Although, was that at the beginning of the movie?
No, that's towards the end.
Yes, I was just at that moment thinking of things that happened in the first half hour. Um, so that that's what this felt like to me is him trying to make a response to his own better movie that he doesn't necessarily fully believe in and really know how to do, because it all felt like him doing something that he thought would be a debaucherous party, to go back to that word, just because it is kind of in the synopsis and it's kind of what it's going for.
Yeah.
The parts where this movie shines are when he gets back to what he does well, which is just like depicting people at work in an industry.
Yes. Yes.
The after that horrible first half hour, the next hour of the movie I think is fantastic. Where
Oh
we
yeah.
spend a day on a Hollywood set with Margot Robbie and Diego Calva as they're
Hmm.
kind of getting their big breaks, and it's just
Hmm.
this big space like in the desert where there are like 20 movies being filmed at the same time.
Because it's
And then
silent, so they don't need the sound stage.
right,
Hmm.
exactly.
Yeah.
And but then you actually see that Margot Robbie's character can like actually act, and
Hmm.
the chemistry and like the interplay that she has with the female director in this movie, who I don't know
Yeah.
who that is, but those scenes are fantastic. And then Diego Calva has a cool moment. They show them filming like basically what would be like a silent version of Braveheart, and
Yes.
a
Yep.
guy just straight up dies from being like stabbed with a spear. Like that, all that stuff is done so well.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then the movie just tries to be Boogie Nights
Yeah. That. Yeah. Down
for
that
for
third.
the last like hour and a half,
Hmm.
and it's not good at it at all.
Yeah. I can't help but agree. I think the middle of this movie is where it really shines. And I also I wanted to say that Diego Calva really is fantastic, and
He
I
is.
think I think that he deserves all the praise he is getting, and his character it has like I just felt like the ending, the very ending, Chazelle is going for like an all time memorable ending, a la kind of Portrait of a Lady on Fire, something like that. Like he's going for this
Or like
very very powerful
Cinema
moment of like
Paradiso.
Yeah, exactly. Cinema parody. That's what he's going for. And I thought that was well done, but I had just stopped.
It didn't earn
I
it.
Yeah, he didn't like.
Yeah.
I could have used that without the really gross stuff. And this is the thing too, is like, we watch a lot of movies, and there's some pretty dark stuff out there. There's movies that have stuff that's hard to watch, and even like there's like body horror stuff. Like when we watched Crimes of the Future, like that's
Yeah.
gross and hard to watch, but it's done tactfully,
Well, it
or at
also
least
feels like it serves a purpose.
purpose. Yes,
A lot
and
of this here is
it
just
feels
like,
crude. It feels crude and like like at one point when Margot Robbie like vomits all over somebody, and it's just like
yeah, for a
I,
while.
for a while, yeah,
I
not.
mean, this and Triangle of Sadness kind of both had this, like, yeah, I get it. Like pretty people being gross.
Hmm.
We understand what's happening here. We don't need to continue to watch more of this just
Yeah,
for effect. I get, like, it's already, I get it.
yeah. Once it happens, once she pukes, that's the shock factor. And if that's like what you're going for to make a point or whatever, it's like okay, but like you don't need to keep it going. It doesn't need to be
And
30
like go
seconds.
back to it a second
Close
time.
ups. Yeah, it doesn't need to be
Yeah.
that, man. And so I don't know. I feel like there's a version of this movie where the gross stuff is just toned way down, and the level of debauchery that like I expected from when I saw the trailer, and I was like, okay, Chazelle's really gonna lean into this crazy parties, right? That level, if it would have just been at that level, the good stuff that this movie does would have more than made up for it, and I probably would have given this like a 3.5 or a 4 or even higher. But instead, he just sinks it so low. It's like
Yeah.
it starts that way. So immediately, I'm just on the back foot, kind of like a little like just repulsed, and like I just feel like it's just that image with the elephant thing. Like that's just like in my brain now. It's just seared into
Yeah.
my head. I didn't deserve that. And what purpose? Like,
Yeah, I do find it fascinating that there's a very loud minority that thinks this movie is going to be like the lasting movie from 2022. And I could not disagree with that more. I think this is just going to disappear into borderline obscurity after a while, particularly because of the length. So I'm giving this one a 2.5 just because
mhm.
there are that kind of first hour after the horrible half hour
Yeah,
is some of the best movie making I saw all of 2022.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
the rest of it's just kind of dumb and wastes its time and doesn't really succeed at being Boogie Nights. So 2.5, I've definitely seen worse things, but like, yeah, this movie is just like the biggest gap between the highs and the lows of any movie I saw all year.
Hmm. Yeah, I would agree, and I'm also going at 2.5. I think this is just okay, and I guess that now I realize I gave all three of these movies 2.5. Yeah, that's the thing. All three of these movies, they got big stars. They're really long. They've got a lot of hype. Two of them are nominated for Best Picture, and in our opinion, Nate, they're just not that great. They're,
Yeah.
they're just not. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
they're a flawed. I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Babylon 2.5, and as far as people looking back years from now and actually realizing that it's actually incredible, I just don't see that happening. I don't think
I don't
there's
either.
I don't think 20 years from now they're going to be like, oh, elephant poop, like oh, genius. No,
I
no.
think, yeah, people want to keep rewatching this movie over and over and die on that hill. You're more than welcome to. I'm just not going to be joining you.
All right. All right. Well, there you go. Rapid review. Got those three done right before we get to our top 10 of the year, which will be coming up soon as the
Yep.
Oscars approach. But unless there's anything else, I believe it's my turn to put a wrap on the show.
Take it away.
All right. There's so much more to be done. We've got to innovate. We've got to inspire. We got to dream beyond these pesky shells of flesh and bone.